She's gone from barely surviving to smiling and thriving. And it's a story of the journey of an intense prescription medication regime and its associated negative effects to an almost prescription-free life and well-being that has arrived. And it's all because of medical cannabis. I just want to say thanks to Michael for letting me share my story, and I wanted to also say thanks to Dr. Andrew Catalaris, although he doesn't understand it. He's been really a very big mentor of mine because I've watched him on TV so much. I also did talk to him when I started my journey of getting my daughter off prescription medication and putting her on medical cannabis. So just to tell you just a tiny bit about her, and it's about two things. It's about getting off psychotropic medications that she's had since birth because of she had a brain hemorrhage when she was born. She's severely disabled and she's got cerebral palsy and epilepsy. So I wanted to tell you these few things about her first so you could just see the cognition of where she was after a lifetime of 35 years of where she went, which I'll tell you that in the next part. She lived a life of positivity and she had happiness and laughter, and a lot of it was at her own expense. She had an easygoing personality and she loved social interaction and she loved her life. She loved TV and she wanted to be an actress, either on Home and Away or Neighbours. Her room had to be specifically painted the same shades as a room on Full House. She was the instigator in her respite centre for getting drama classes going, and she drove me crazy getting 184 tunes onto her iPod. She had an electric wheelchair when we lived up on the Sunshine Coast, and she could drive that from Alexandra Headlands all the way down to Cotton Tree under threat of murder if she went past a certain point. And I didn't really have to worry about it because she had a little dog, a little poodle, and it sat on her lap, and this dog would growl at anyone who went near her. So, and at her centre care where she went, where she goes at Broadbeach, her job is the greeter. So she used to know everyone and she knew all the gossip. Then under prescription medication, as I've written down here, the mother load of psychotropic drugs. In 2010, she had to go under mental health, and I lived next door to the night nurse manager of the Gold Coast Hospital, and I had a big talk to her, and we had a talk about how she had deteriorated, obviously, over the last 5 years, so from 2005 to 2010. So at that particular time, she claimed she had bugs under her skin, so she's gone from fabulous to now she's got bugs under her skin. She said she wore a cape to hide them, and she had a radio talking in her ear. Now, she's not schizophrenic. That's been a diagnosis made of not her. What it turns out is it's a toxicity of an overload of psychotropic drugs over her lifetime of use. So what she would do was she would scream from the moment her eyes opened in the morning at 5:30. She'd get rigid and she'd scream and shout and talk about murderers, imposters and thieves. She was constantly aggressive and agitated. She had no perception of herself. She had no enjoyment of life and she had no interest. She had no emotions and she looked and acted like a zombie that screamed. She had no energy and she couldn't move a chair. She couldn't go anywhere. Okay, so I was very fortunate with Blue Care. They used to come, and one of the girls went down into our garage and she rang the Blue Care #1 manager on the Gold Coast, and she said, "If you don't do something terrible's going to happen here." Now that wasn't because of how I was, that's how they perceived her when they had to come in of a morning. So I was very lucky. They decided I didn't get any respite, like everybody else does, and they got me a weekend in a retirement home for her. And I said to them, this really isn't a good placement because this is mental health. This isn't, a disabled person looking for respite. And I just wrote here, I remember the vision in this respite placement in this village where she was to spend the weekend. The vision was of these old people sitting and relaxing on a Saturday morning at the tables, and they were having a very special morning tea. They had cups of tea in their hands and they had raspberry tarts in the other, And then they had Carly. She's screaming at the top of her voice about murderers, imposters and thieves sitting amongst them. So off to the psychiatrist we go again, and I got heaps more medication to control this escalating situation. And her behaviour was out of control. It escalated now into a higher stratosphere of madness. And then I had to think about what was I going to do, because I'd handed her over to the professionals for all these years, and I'd done everything that they said. I put every tablet down her throat. I went to the altar of medications and did everything they said. But she was actually literally mad. There's no other word. She was mad. So her respite centre couldn't cope with her. The girls from Blue Care couldn't cope with her. And, we could barely cope with her. All the signs and symptoms of drug overload, every one is what she had. So all those things that I said. So I thought to myself, what am I going to do? But the calmness in the storm started after being put in touch with partners in recovery. That was for mental health. And there are two men, and it's Nick and Lewis, where I actually did feel for the first time that I had someone listening to me and would support me and maybe go on this madness trip with me, because who else would want to? When Nick and Lewis came to the house, Carly yelled and screamed at the top of her voice, telling them they were imposters and that she had a gun and that she was going to shoot them. But I thought, fantastic, someone's in this house seeing this firsthand. We had a representative from the Disability Services of Queensland because no one knew what to do with her. And I was yet again very lucky because the lady was a beautiful lady, and she said, this is one very sick little lady. But Carly set another record because she threw a full cup of coffee at 1.5 metres to land at her feet. This is totally different to how she was, the most well-behaved, greeter, do anything. Okay, and around this time I started, thinking to myself about what I needed to do, because I knew that if I didn't do it and take self-responsibility, which I think Dr. Andrew Ketelara said once, and I thought, well, I better think about what it is that I need to do. So in my mind, I went back to 2010 and said, well, she turned mad then. So in the highest probabilities, it was her epileptic drug, so I'm going to start to get her off. I went to the library and I got Peter Bregan's books. He's a psychiatrist who's passionate about addiction and withdrawals. And he's had his own clinics, and he's written many books where most psychiatrists don't take people down, we just put them up. That's what happened to Carly. She just went up yearly. They get used to the medication, so they up them. I've got a list here, and at the end, I'm not expecting you to understand it, but if you just hear the figures, you'll know that she was on the mother load of psychotropics. So, since we started taking her off, that's another story. Drug withdrawal, which I never heard about it from my friends, but never understood it, is madness in itself. You are living in hell. When the people come down, they describe it as a weight, an enormous weight that's the medication pushed down on the soft, spongy brain. So it doesn't heal the brain, it just shuts it up. But it gets to a toxic overload where nothing will shut it up. So when you release the pressure and take the medication up, the spongy bit rebounds like on a trampoline, and the symptoms can be higher. So the medical profession can say, see, that's why she needs the medication. But we had to wear it out, and it would take 2 to 3 weeks for every level that we went up. But her behaviour started coming back, and from the first weekend that I gave her the medical cannabis, we were sitting down at Kingscliff Beach, and we always had to sit at the opposite end where no one sat because she'd be screaming out. And we just couldn't believe it. She was actually making a bit of sense. She actually focused, and she was calm, and she was just sitting there listening, and our heads are spinning, and we're terrified because we thought, is a miracle happening, but it's going to disappear? What has actually happened? Now that went on and on and on, but till December when we got some calmness. That's why I say last November she couldn't sit in this room. She'd have been screaming at the top of her voice and no one would have heard a thing. So she had to sit down in the park. So since then she is, I'll just give you this little thing. She was on Topramax 25 milligrams. She's not on that anymore. Keppra was 1,000 milligrams. She's not on none of that. She was on Tegretol 1,600 milligrams. That's the top dose she can have. She's not on that. Now, they're her epileptic medications, and in that time she's had one 30-second epileptic medication while she's been on the CBD and THCA. When she was thrown into mental health, she was put on Seroquel and risperidone, which are usually given for bipolar or schizophrenia. So the Seroquel, she was on 800 milligrams, she's on nil now, and on the risperidone, she was on 6 milligrams, she's on 2.5 milligrams. So of that, even though you can't see it, she's only on one medication there, and it's less than half, and she's withdrawing from that shocking one now. It's very hard. Thank you. She did see a psychiatrist. She does see one down in Byron Bay, and it was discussed, and he did tell me all this is illegal, so it's all above board. But the elephant in the room to get Carly off this mother load of drugs is the cannabis. The elephant in the room to have Carly have seizure control is the cannabis. And her madness that she displayed, and it was madness, has majorly diminished. And logically, the highest probability of this difference is taking her off the prescription drugs. So while there's no test that says, oh, gee, that was the prescription drugs, it's kind of weird that we take her off the prescription drugs from last June and she's turning normal again. So basically, she's been able to sit here today. I've only had to hit her with the paper about 10 times to shut her up. If you saw me listen, she's used to it. And she actually understands now, oh, that's my mother hitting me on the head, that means shut up. Before, there was no comprehension. So you can see herself today, she's happy, she's been smiling, she loves me talking about her. She wanted to wear that pink Nimbin dress that she got, and all the pearls are not because I put them around her neck. You don't have to look at me, I'm not a pearl person. Everything that she's wearing is by her own design. She's got a life, back again. Yeah. So our lives are becoming bearable again. Now I've only got, I think, 3 more lines here. I did want to say something politically, but you can see how short it is, so it's not boring. And all I wanted to say is I'm not at all worried about standing up and being counted. Carly was the 3rd child in Queensland where I had to beat my head up against a brick wall to get her into a regular school, which up in those days was up in McGregor, up in Sunnybank. She's the 3rd child who had a federal case fought about her to have a laparoscopic hysterectomy after they'd closed the law that no one with disability was allowed to have it. And although I see the point, hardly, when you actually see somebody like Carly, it had to go, a whole case had to be created. We never knew what we were getting into. Went before a judge. She was in the hospital the next day because all the do-gooders who never came around to help me or manager, they sign their little name on a piece of paper and try and have it stopped. But the loophole was that they get stopped out because you've got it all booked up. So I have been a fighter for Carly. So I don't care about standing up, and I spoke to Steve Dixon, the Member of Parliament in Buderim, and he did ask me to say that only one thing, that he could no longer deny to himself the incredible stories of cannabis that came across his desk, and that he could no longer be part of political inaction. So after you've heard my story today, you really do say, she's only had one epileptic fit, but we want to take the medical cannabis off her. We've taken her off the mother load of drugs that sent her mad. Oh, but we need to take her medication off her. So I don't know if there's a veil between you and me, and I'm talking from Russia. I actually never understood that I lived in Australia. I work in a hospital. And the psychiatrists downstairs are very interested in this. They don't know anything about it. But I don't know. I never knew about it. I don't know if I work in the veil and I'm in another country, and that this is Australia, and that's my healthy daughter down there. And I see sick people all day, and she's got better, but they want to throw away all the bottles. Anyway, that's my story, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, heaps. you so much. Thank you. Now. So I'm really at the end. I've got Stephanie here, who's got a story to tell too. And I really appreciate everyone hanging in for the day. Hope it's been worth it. I had a couple of other things to think about. I know, roadside drug testing's been a nightmare for us here. I can tell you the things that people reckon work. Citrus, chocolate, coffee, have a coffee in the car, milk coffee, cops pull you up, you have a swig. Someone else got to what Fisherman's Friends worked. Fisherman's Friends are great to have in the car. But citrus, chocolate, iced coffee, full of sugar, which is a problem, but, you know, some milky thing, some citrus, and clean your teeth. There's quite a few things that work. We've got no choice here but to keep driving, most of us, so it's a gamble every day.
It's not, Michael, it's not only cleaning your teeth, it's cleaning your tongue. That's
clean your tongue?
Oh, have a tongue scraper. Have a tongue scraper.
Yeah, that's where that...
That's what they reckon. I really want to thank Michael Lambert, he's still here. Thank God you hung in all day. He came up today. His family are putting these ads in the paper. I think I told you that, you know, the Murdoch press stuck the price way up, so they had to pull out. But Fairfax are going to print them, I think, the next 2 Sundays. I think this Sunday in Melbourne and the following Sunday in Sydney. Yeah. So look out for him. It's a beautiful letter from his daughter to our friend Malcolm Turnbull. But you can Google greenlight.support and get onto their site, which is still being built. The other one would be to go to Lucy Haslam's site, United in Compassion, UIC. What they're looking is for people to send in photos of themselves when you fill out a quick form of why you're using medical cannabis. And they're going to build up a bank of these people's stories, basically a picture and a story. Tell you what, they couldn't ignore that picture that Luke showed us before. And I don't know what else I've got to say, nothing much, but I really want to thank you, Michael, for coming. I know, 7th of February, the first day back in Federal Parliament, we're taking a bus down there. Medical cannabis users are going, a lot of people are going to be down there at Parliament. First day, we'll be peacefully protesting outside and going inside, talking to politicians, trying to get it on the agenda. If you know anyone interested, encourage them to go. I think it's a Facebook site, Enough is Enough, something else, I can't remember, but you'd find it. Who? Enough is Enough. It is enough. And I'm just going to put you on to Stephanie. She's got a good story too. Someone asked, what do the doctors say about that? Every day we hear a story in the hemp embassy now, and we say, well, what do the doctors say? And the doctors are just baffled. It's almost like they don't want to know. It's embarrassing to know. And to give credit to the police in South Australia when they busted Jenny Hallam, I saw a quote last week from the cops saying, we know we did the wrong thing, but someone complained, so we had to act. It's pretty pathetic. But like Luke, I'd like to say one positive thing for the cops. In New South Wales, they've had discretion and they've used it, and they've used it in Nimbin quite a lot, not to bust people with oils and tinctures. They have genuinely saved a lot of lives in the last year and saved an enormous amount of suffering. So some credit to the cops, there's some movement, and I can see a light at the end of the tunnel that's coming. Here's Stephanie.
Okay, you guys are very tired. You've been here all day. But I wanted to come in and tell this story because I thought it might really make a difference to someone here. I had a friend 3 years ago. Her little boy was 5 years old when they told her that he had brain cancer. Her husband had just left her. Her house had flooded. I had been babysitting, taking care of her dogs for her, and I had a relationship with her, but I wasn't real close to her. And when she told me the little boy had cancer, I knew Tony from years back. I'd been coming here for 20 years, and I never needed him before. And so I decided that maybe I could talk to Tony about cannabis oil for for little Lockie. And I did that, and I spent $1,000. I bought all the oil I could afford and a few other things, and I went home with it, and I think I cried more than I thought about it. I was just really worried about approaching her. She was a university professor. She'd been through so much crap, and then she had this little boy that was just beautiful, and he was so sick. She wouldn't talk to anybody. She kept the doors closed. Whether I wanted to speak to her or not, I couldn't. She wouldn't have anything to do with anyone. It was as if he'd already passed away. So I decided to get really brave, and it wasn't about me. It was about Lockie. I went to her home, and I stood there, and I couldn't get the words out. I was just so afraid to tell her I wanted her child to have cannabis oil. And everyone knows you just get high and you hang in alleys and you smoke bongs, and it's not for a child that's 5 years old. And I thought, well, I wasn't really sure how she'd react. So I tried to tell her, and all of a sudden she says, "Are you trying to tell me that you have cannabis oil for Lockie?" I said, "Yes." And we were crying and jumping up and down and embracing each other. And I realized she was really, really very happy to know that someone could get this oil for her. And she said, "You know, he's on chemotherapy, and the doctor says it's going to kill him, that he's too little, and the brain cancer is pretty advanced, and they just don't have much hope for him." And he told her that even if they did cure the cancer, the chemo would probably kill him. So we started him on the oil, and at the end of 1 year, to try to make this short, they told her he didn't need chemo anymore, that he was recovering so beautifully that he didn't need chemo anymore. And then he stared at her for a minute and said, "This is not chemo. Chemo did not heal this child." He said, "When you look out in the waiting room and you see all those kids that you've been with all year long that are getting this therapy, chemo, they're all dying." He said, "We've already lost some, and I'm a doctor, and I know that giving him this cannabis oil saved his life. I know this." He said, "And yet I can't give it to these other kids who really need it. I'm not even allowed to talk to you. You can't let anyone know that we even shared the conversation, because I will lose my license as a doctor. I've got 8,000 kids who need cannabis oil right now, and they can't have it. They give us a very small group of kids to work with for experimenting. It comes out 100%. We get them cured, and we say, 'Look,' and they say, 'Oh, well, we'll think about that for a few more years.' And no, you can't have more kids to work with." You know, we've watched so many kids go through the most horrible experiences, and to see this little boy and actually watch him heal and become a healthy 7.5-year-old going back to school. He's back in, I'm sorry, the mic. He's back in school, and he's beautiful and healthy, and when he sees me, he gives me great big hugs. His mom and I still try not to cry, because it's just too good to be true. But yet, even the doctor said, "You know, I wish I could have given him the oil." He said, "I would like to give all these kids the oil and see them all come out of this beautifully. We already know that it cures this cancer, but the laws won't let us. I can't help him." He said, "I can't do anything for him except poison him with chemotherapy." He said, "So you keep him on this another year at least, and don't tell anybody we ever talked about it." And I brought her back another 8 bottles, year 2. This is almost 3 years. And it's just wonderful to see how healthy and beautiful he is. And I encourage anybody to have some faith. If you have an issue with cancer and it's a child, a baby, epilepsy, don't be afraid of it. It's not something that can hurt you. And when you watch someone in 2 weeks stop having seizures completely, you don't need to question it that much. You know, they're doing beautiful research in the United States, and they're saying, "Look, we've already got all the proof. We can tell you everything that's happening." YouTube is beautiful. You go through as much information on cannabis as you want on YouTube. That's how I went home and started listening and being more attentive. I'm just so excited to tell you that it's just beautiful, and I hope you'll all, back up anyone you know who's ill, and have the courage to offer it to them and try. And it's just fun to tell the story. I had to tell the story. I waited all day to tell the story.
Thanks so much for coming today.